This will be my 8th year planting and growing a garden. So today I'm going to talk to you all about organic heirloom gardening, seed starting, soil quality, and compost. It is the end of January already, and believe it or not, it's already time to start thinking about starting seeds, or at the very least, garden planting, depending on what zone you live in. So I live in zone 6B. For me, I did my garden planting about a month ago. I always do that in the week between Christmas and New Year's. I just sit down, I go through my seed inventory, see what I have, what I need, and get my seed orders in. I like to do that well in advance because I really like to order heirloom seeds from specific places, and I'll link where I get my seeds from. Usually it's from Baker Creek. I get most of my seeds there. And you know, if you wait, they do go out of stock on some things. So I like to get that done well in advance so I know what I need. And then already by the end of January, it is time to start seeds, at least for the spring garden. I don't start everything at the end of January because our last frost isn't until the end of April, sometimes even the beginning of May. So things like peppers, tomatoes, things that are not cold hardy at all, that I want to put in my summer garden, I'm not gonna start those seeds for several more weeks. But things that are cold hardy, like lettuce, cabbage, brassicas, things like that, I am going to start those seeds now so that in 6 to 8 weeks, in March, I can transplant those things outside around the same time that I am planting my potatoes and my onions. That's always something I do toward the end of March, maybe like first week of April, which that reminds me, I need to order my seed potatoes. I go really big when it comes to planting potatoes and onions. That's just something we eat a lot of. In fact, I have a whole video of like a massive onion harvest I did 2 years ago, and I showed you guys how to braid onions and store them long term. I'll link that video if you guys want to check that out. But I've already started planning for my potato crop this year. You know, I've done it a few different ways. I have just taken organic store-bought potatoes and planted those, let those sprout eyes a little bit, right? So I buy them, wait a month, and they start sprouting eyes, and then I planted those, and I got a decent crop. But my best potato crops came from my seed potato that I've got from Wood Prairie Family Farm. I have been buying seed potato and seed from them for a long time as well, along with Baker Creek. Those are two of my favorite sources. When it comes to planting for your garden, you really want to think about what your goal is. Are you just wanting to grow some things? That way you get outside and you have some fresh food on hand, maybe a little kitchen garden or an herb garden, which is amazing and wonderful and very practical. If so, honestly, you don't need to put that much thought into it. You can even just go and buy, you know, little seedlings, little plants from your local nursery, stick them in the ground, put some good compost on there, and they'll grow just fine. But if you really want to grow a large volume of food, then you do need to put some thought into it. You need to think about what you're going to grow, how much of everything you need to grow for your family. There are calculators that for free that you can go to on various websites and, like, you know, type in how many family members you have and how much of each crop that you should grow, like how many potato plants per family member that you should grow to feed your family for an entire year if that's your goal. And so I think for my family, it was like 20 potato plants per person, which we eat a lot of potatoes, and we're just really large people, and we're heavy eaters. We don't eat like birds. So I think I'd have to bump that up. My Thrive Market order arrived while I was talking about seeds. So let's take a quick break, and I'm gonna show you what I got in this order. I'm gonna go through and show you everything I got on this order, but I just wanna take a quick minute and tell you about Thrive Market. Thrive Market is an online grocery store for healthy groceries, things that you might not be able to find at your local grocery stores, especially if you live in the middle of nowhere like me. I don't have healthy grocery stores within driving distance, so it's so nice and convenient that I can just get on my Thrive Market app, load up my cart with all the healthy things that I like and that I need, and have my order shipped straight to my door in just a few days. What I really like about Thrive Market is that they make my job as the gatekeeper of my home a lot easier by all out banning toxic ingredients. They have banned over 1,000 toxic ingredients to date, so I don't have to scan labels. I know when I, load up my cart on my app, I'm not going to get artificial dyes and flavorings. They're also dedicated to keeping their prices as low as possible, Thrive Market price matches, and there aren't a bunch of hidden fees. So the price that you see is the price you get when you check out. All orders over $49 ship for free from zero waste warehouses. So they're making an effort to be environmentally friendly, and they're not charging you for, a tip or an extra markup for a delivery fee. You guys know what I mean. If you've done grocery delivery services, maybe when you go to check out, your total's like $45, but then by the time they add on all the extra fees, it's $70. That is not the case with Thrive Market. They also donate a membership to a family in need for every paid annual membership. You can get a monthly membership for $12 a month or an annual membership for $59.95 a year. If you've been wanting to try out Thrive Market, right now is a great time to join. When you join using my link, thrivemarket.com/Hopewell Heights, you will get 30% off your first order plus a free gift worth up to $60 on top of any sales they have going on. And they have sales all the time. Let me show you some of my favorites. I'm gonna show you what I got in this order. A lot of Old Faithfuls and a few new things. So I really love this brand, Primal Kitchen. You guys probably have heard of Primal Kitchen. Great if you're eating keto or, just kind of more on the carnivore side. I am addicted to this buffalo sauce. I put it on everything. I even put it in my soup. I put it on my burgers, just on everything. I eat a lot of it. So I got 2 big bottles of that. I got some applesauce. Also got several bags of pitted prunes and pitted dates. My kids love prunes and dates, and I've just found that these make a great snack, to take along to wherever we're going. I'll just throw a bag of these in my diaper bag, especially when you have little guys. You always have to be prepared with snacks. Okay, pork rinds. These are baked pork rinds. This is something that I have not tried. They just looked good. I don't know, they popped me up. I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna try those. Okay, this is something that I do get on almost every order. This is grain-free granola. I have incorporated some freshly milled wheat and some grains back into my diet, but I still do better if I just go light on the grains. I really like granola though, and I've made my own granola. I've made sourdough granola. I have a recipe for that too, and it's delicious. But for now, until I know I'm totally out of the woods with my digestive issues, I'm sticking to grain-free granola. More from Primal Kitchen. This matcha collagen keto latte. This is something that I get in basically every order. It's absolutely delicious. All you do is pour hot water over it. I also add a little bit of salt and like some MCT oil and use a frother, and it's just really, really good, especially in the afternoon if you're not having coffee or if you just want a little pick-me-up. There is 30 to 50 milligrams of caffeine, so just a little bit in each serving, but less than if you were to have a big cup of coffee. Now, something new for me this month is the chai tea version of that. So I'm excited to try this because I love a good chai tea. Also, my daughter really loves to bake, and she's 11, so she can go on her own and read cookbooks, and I actually just put her in a baking course online, and she's working her way through that. So she's baking all the time, and she's always asking me for baking supplies, but I don't want to keep junk in the house. I do want her to learn to bake though, and really learn to enjoy that. So one thing she likes to use a lot of is sprinkles. So these are naturally colorful sprinkles. Always appreciate that. But Thrive Market helps me out with keeping, natural, fun baking supplies for her. Marshmallows. She requested marshmallows too. I actually have a recipe for homemade marshmallows that you can make with egg whites and gelatin. I'll link that for you guys. They're absolutely delicious, but they just don't work the same if you're gonna make, I think what she wanted to make, or why she asked for this, is like these really fancy Rice Krispies with sprinkles and icing. So my homemade marshmallows, fabulous if you want them in a latte. They don't work so well for Rice Krispies. Okay, I think that's all. I think that is all I got in this order. Some baking supplies, some Primal Kitchen essentials, some other treats for me, and that's it. I've already started picking out my potato varieties that I want this year. I for sure want one early variety that matures early in the season as like a little new potato that I can just go out and pick straight out of the garden this summer, and even into the early fall, and bring them in and cook them for dinner. I won't be storing these. These are new potatoes that I'm gonna eat straight from the garden. So those would be like an early variety. And then mostly I want to focus on, so I'll probably do like 1 or 2 rows of those early varieties of new potatoes. And then I want to focus on late season potatoes that don't mature until later in the season. These are your storage variety potatoes. So I'll probably do some kind of russet and, you know, something buttery that turns into a really good like mashed potato, because I want to have potatoes that are really good for baking, really good for mashing, and we really like frying potatoes. I will put a list of my picks for potato varieties in the description of this video for this year. I need to get that order in this week. But today, all I need to do is look at my little list of seeds that I start in January, which it's lettuce, it's cabbage, it's rosemary. I don't have rosemary out in the garden right now. Rosemary is actually an herb that can overwinter. You can bring it inside in a pot and then put it back out in the garden, but I don't know. I let mine die a couple years ago and I didn't have fresh rosemary last year and I missed it. So I want to start some rosemary and then also my brassicas. So it's really not too many things that I'm going to be starting today. And you know, there are some other things that are cold hardy that I'll put in my spring garden, like peas and beets, that I don't need to start inside. I can actually just direct sow those. I keep all of my seeds in a huge photo binder and I keep them organized in these plastic little photo sheets. You guys know what these are. You know, you stick pictures down in here. Well, seed packets actually fit perfectly in these. And it's just a great way to keep all of your seeds organized and in one place. So I need to go through here, and I just got a new seed order in, so I need to organize all my new stuff and put that in here and get out the seeds that I'm going to be starting today. I do have a bag of organic seed starting mix. I just found it out in the garage, so I'm going to use it, but you actually don't need to go buy seed starting mix. If you have some good soil, you know, out in your yard, wherever you're gonna put your garden, or if you have some soil from last year or some compost, you can actually use that. You just wanna make sure that your little seeds are not competing with weed seed for nutrients. So what you wanna do is get your soil from your yard or from wherever and sift it, make sure that there aren't any rocks or anything in there, and then bake it in your oven. Just put it in there at like 150 for a half an hour. That should do the trick. That should kill your weed seed. I don't know, you could probably go longer, like 45 minutes to an hour. It's not going to hurt it. But that's actually the principle of composting. When you have a compost heap or a compost pile, whether it's on a small scale with just your scraps from your kitchen table, or it's a large scale with manure and straw from livestock, you want to pile all of that up and let it really heat up and turn it so that it starts breaking things down and kills any weed seed or anything that you don't want in your compost competing for nutrients with your actual seeds. Now, as far as containers for starting seedlings, you can really use anything. It can be as simple as a little egg carton. You can start seeds with just, you don't have to spend money, right? You can just go out in your yard, get some soil, sift it out, bake it in your oven, and then put it here in little egg carton and start your seeds that way, and that would essentially be free. If you have, you know, little seed starting trays, obviously you guys know you can use these. And another way to start seeds is by soil blocking. I've done soil blocking in the past a few years. This will be, I think, my 8th year gardening. So I think at least 2 or 3 years I did all of my seed starting with soil blocking. And the nice thing about this is you're not using any containers that you have to then, you know, start your seeds. And then once they start sprouting and they develop a root system, you have to pull the seedling out of that container, disrupt the root system to transplant it out into your garden. Well, with soil blocking, there is no container. It's just, and we'll do this, I'll show you. You just make a block of soil and transplant that directly out into your garden. You know, it's also a way to cut down on waste if you don't want to be using plastic. If you know you're going to be starting seedlings that need to be transplanted into a larger container before going out in the garden, like usually tomatoes, you start those so far in advance that, you know, they start out as little bitty guys when they sprout, but by the time they're ready to go in your garden, you know, they're a pretty decent size and they will have outgrown their little bitty container and they will have needed to be transplanted into something a little bit larger. So the great thing about soil blocking is you just pick up the little block of soil with your tomato seedling and set it down into a larger container before it goes out to be transplanted. You can buy kits with all the supplies you need to start seeds anywhere on Amazon. at a nursery, and I've done that, and I'll link all the supplies, but I'm just showing you all this because you don't have to buy anything. You can just use things you probably have at home. So this is a jelly roll, like sheet pan with a lid. And these are really great for starting seeds. So for example, let's say that I was going to go the egg carton route. You know, I could just take my little egg cartons and start my seeds, place them in here. And when you are first allowing your seeds to germinate, you know, before they've sprouted, you want them to sprout, you really want to put them in a warm place, like over your refrigerator or something. You don't want it to be super warm, just not cold. And you want there to be a little bit of moisture. So putting a lid on the container is helpful, and I've just found these to be very handy. I have 2 of them, and I use them to start seeds every year. Now, last year was the first and only year that I did not start any seeds indoors. And I also didn't buy seeds from nursery. I actually direct sowed everything straight into my garden. And the reason was, number one, I just kind of wanted to experiment with that. We have a longer growing season in zone 6B, so we can, you know, our last frost is April, and our first frost isn't until October or sometimes even into November. That's a really long growing season. So I just wanted to experiment and see how my yields did with direct sowing everything, and everything actually did great. But another reason is I was having my baby in March, so I just didn't want to mess with seedlings and taking care of all that, and I'm kind of glad I went that route. However, now that I don't have a brand new baby, I have a little more time and energy, and I know that that will continue into the spring. I definitely want to get a jump start on the growing season, especially on my spring garden and my things like tomatoes and peppers by starting indoors. And that is the point of starting seeds indoors. You don't have to do it. You can start everything outside as long as you have the right conditions and environment. The point of starting seeds indoors is to extend that growing season so that your plants are just that much more mature by the time that they go outside when your last frost has passed. This is especially important when you live in, you know, colder climates. For the sake of just showing you guys a few different options today, we'll do an egg carton, we'll do a few little seedling trays, and then I'll do some soil blocking all right here in my trusty jelly roll pan. Like I said, I don't have that much to start today. And then this will just sit in my window by my kitchen counter. I don't have a greenhouse. You don't need a greenhouse, although I want one day because they're just really pretty. But you can just use any, preferably south-facing window if you have one. I don't have that many south-facing windows, so I use an east-facing window, and it works just fine. I'm telling you, you can most of the time just use what you have and make gardening and seed starting work for you just fine. Now for soil blocking, I actually want to get my seed starting mix or soil compost, whatever you're using, just get that a little bit moist, a little bit damp. Otherwise, when you go to make your seed blocks, they're not going to hold their shape if it's really dry. So I just got a bowl here. I'm going to fill it maybe a little over halfway full with my seed starting mix, add some water, and that's it. All right, there you go. My mix is nice and damp. So this method is a little bit messier, but you know, like I said, the pros are it's more minimalist as far as you don't have to worry about keeping containers, and they actually make these seed starting block things in larger sizes with a huge pole attached, so you can be standing and just go along. And I think you could make like up to 16 seed blocks at once. That would be really nice if you were, you know, starting seedlings to sell and you had a large volume of seedlings to start, or if you just had a really big market garden or something. I don't know, I don't have a need for one of those, but they're pretty cool. Okay, so I'm just gonna push pretty hard here. Make sure that I really compact my mix in here. Otherwise it'll just fall apart when I go and push this out into my tray. Okay. So there you have it. All right, there we go. See, that was quick and easy. Now I've got 4 nice little seed blocks, and they already have little holes in them for seeds, so they're ready to go. You know, I think one of the downsides to this Pinterest social media era that we live in is the aesthetic. Don't get me wrong, I love a beautiful aesthetic,
but I think it can prevent a lot of us from doing things that don't actually need to be Pinterest perfect, especially when it comes to homesteading type things that people have been doing forever, for all of time. You can just use what you have. It doesn't have to look a certain way. And that's why I'm showing you my seed starting today. You know, this maybe isn't like Pinterest perfect, but it's going to work just fine.
One rookie mistake to avoid is forgetting to label your seeds. Unless you've been gardening for a long time, then you just know what different seedlings look like. I can't find my popsicle sticks, and that's my preferred way to label. I just like to, take a Sharpie and write whatever on the popsicle stick and stick it down in the little seedling tray. So I just typed out on paper and printed on paper and then laminated little labels. You don't want to obviously put paper into the seedling trays because you're going to be watering, and then your paper will disintegrate and you'll lose your labels. If you don't know what seedlings look like and you didn't label things, that's going to make it pretty confusing when you go to plant your seedlings. Now, a lot of these are cold weather crops that do well in a spring or a fall garden. So, if spring isn't a good time for you, maybe you're having a baby, you have a new baby, or, it's just not a good time. You don't have a garden prepped, then you can always plant a lot of these things in the fall, like cabbage. That's what I'm sowing now, is cabbage seed. And this is a great fall crop. I'm going to do a dozen cabbage plants for my spring garden, and I'll probably do a dozen more in the fall. A lot of that will get turned into sauerkraut. A lot of it actually, the spring cabbage crop will get eaten over the summer. I'll just cut it up and, stir fry it. It's great in stir fry. And then the fall crop will either be stored in the root cellar or turned into sauerkraut. Now, I'm not counting how many tiny little seeds I'm sowing here. I'm just, putting at least 3 or 4 in each little space here. I'm using the egg carton for cabbage. And there's no rhyme or reason here. I'm not picking a certain container for a certain plant. I just have a variety of containers that I wanted to show you guys. So, any one of these containers would have worked just fine for starting any of these seeds. I'm also just not too picky about the depth of sowing my seeds. Unless something says specifically that it needs to be surface sown, then I don't push it down into the soil. If not, I just push it down a little bit and then just go back once I'm done and cover it with some more. I had some leftover seed starting mix, so then now I'll just sprinkle this over top of what I just started. When I'm done with a packet of seeds, I just seal it up. If it's not sticky, then I do tape it shut to make sure that I don't have a complete mess in my seed binder here with seeds falling out everywhere. And then I just put it back in its place and I'm done. Cauliflower is actually not something that I've grown before, mainly because my husband doesn't like it. He doesn't eat cauliflower, but I like it. It's not one of my favorites by any means, but I do like it. And so I'm going to give it a whirl. I'm just going to plant a couple of plants this year and see how it does. Leeks are another first time crop for me. Really hoping these do well because I love leeks. I especially love them in soups. And once again, stir fry. That's how I like all my vegetables. I can stir fry. I do not like raw vegetables. Sorry, guys. I just don't. Not appetizing to me. But I go through a lot of leeks and I've never grown them. So give it a try, and I'm hoping that a lot of these crops do well enough to where I can try to freeze dry some of the extra, wash it, prep it, chop it up, and freeze dry it so it's really easy to throw into soups and things like that in the winter especially. Winter time historically has always been a season of rest. We all need seasons of rest. God created the world and then he rested. We're still supposed to take a day of rest every week. All of that planning we do in the spring and the work in the summer, the harvest in the fall should culminate in that season of rest in the winter where we just get to just kind of relax and enjoy the fruits of our labor by a warm fire and just rest. It's definitely our season of rest here on the farm. Well, I want to label as I go. I get to talking and then I forget to do these things. So there are my leeks. I don't want to forget that. But here on the farm, winter is definitely slower for us. There's still stuff to be done. Still have to milk the cow. You know, there's stuff to be done, but it's just not, it's nothing like summertime. And if you combine, you know, our duties here on the farm with the kids' activities, baseball, and all the things they have going on, spring, summer, and fall are just very busy, and it's a lot. So I actually look forward to winter and resting, and I'm really hoping to be able to produce a lot of food in our garden this year, store a lot of it away in our new cold room / root cellar. This will be the first year that I have a dedicated food storage area, and so that's exciting. I'm anxious to see what we can do. All right, that's that. So I'm just gonna, you know, lightly mist all of these starts here. Alrighty, that is that. So I'm just going to water all of this from the bottom. So I like to leave a little space in whatever container I'm using to start my seeds. That way it's really easy for me to water them, because if you pack everything so tightly, then you can't easily water from the bottom and you have water splashing out everywhere. The only thing that I was not able to find was celery seed, and I am pretty sure I have celery seed somewhere. I use a lot of celery, and I definitely want to grow celery this year, so I either need to find mine or I need to order some, and that's okay. It'll just be a few, you know, getting started a few days later than everything else, but all of this is labeled and ready to go.
All right, so if I wouldn't have been filming this would have taken me 5 to 10 minutes max to do right here in my kitchen. I didn't really need, you know, a special dedicated space. And now my seeds are ready and tucked away to germinate. The ground has been covered with snow and ice for, gosh, like 3 weeks, 3+ weeks now, but it's finally starting to melt so I can get back out in the garden and do my final clearing out and cleaning. It looks pretty good here in the front part, but in the back I still have quite a bit of work to do. I usually don't clean out the garden in the fall. I kind of let it just sit and rest over the winter, and then I clean it out right before I'm ready to add compost or mulch or whatever I'm adding in the spring. And this year we are going to be doing wood chips. I know you guys are probably familiar with that. If you haven't, by some crazy chance, seen the Back to Eden documentary, you've got to go watch it. I mean, I watched it years ago before I ever did my first garden, and I had my heart set on Back to Eden gardening with wood chips, but my husband just was not on board because that's just not how people do things around here. So I have just played around with other methods of gardening using what I've had available. I have done, you know, just used a tiller and done regular market rows, and I'm not a fan of that. I don't like tilling. There are lots of harmful effects to the soil when you till. I have laid down cardboard and just added compost on top of that, and, you know, like a small layer of mulch. That didn't work really well for me. I think the key to making a Back to Eden style garden with wood chips working is having that like really thick layer, like at least 8 inches of wood chips, because if you just add a really thin layer of mulch or whatever covering you're using, whether it's leaves or pine needles, whatever you're using to suppress weeds, it's not going to work if it's really thin. It's got to be thicker. So I've done the thin layer where I just kind of tried like the halfway Back to Eden garden thing. Yeah, it didn't work. I had tons of weeds still. So I'm really excited about wood chips this year. And as you can see, my soil looks really, really good. I've been adding compost every year to my garden, and, you know, the soil just keeps improving. It's really rich and black. This is what you want it to look like. You don't want your garden soil to almost be like tan, like really light and look like it's, you know, all dried out. You want it to be nice and moist and rich, just like this. And compost is the best way to achieve this kind of light and airy, really rich soil. We've been talking a lot lately about the value that cattle, especially dairy cattle, add to a homestead and a farm. But you can't overlook one of the most valuable products that they produce, and that is manure. Cow manure is, you know, like gold when it comes to wanting to homestead or garden in an organic manner, because it's really all you need to prepare and fertilize your garden.
All right, I am in the stall where we keep our cattle and our dairy cows. And this is our future compost pile. All of the layers of bedding, straw bedding, and manure in this stall. So John cleans out these stalls every spring, but in the meantime, what happens is we just put down clean straw, and then the cows poop on it, obviously. And then rather than cleaning it out every single time, we put down another layer of clean straw. So it's basically starting the process of composting here in the stall. This is called the deep bedding method. Like, that's a name that people who don't farm use, because I've learned, like, my husband would not say that. Like, he wouldn't have a name for this method of keeping cattle. This is just how they do things. But for people like me who did not grow up on a farm, it's helpful to talk about these things, because I have all sorts of questions. Like, should you clean out a stall, every time you've laid down straw and your cow poops, or do you just, add more layers? Well, most people, this is how they do it. And this is essentially what compost is. It is layers of green living material like manure with brown dead material like straw. So here in a few weeks, when he cleans all of this out, he is going to make a huge pile of it and just keep piling it up. And what will happen is that pile will start to really heat up and break down the manure, break down the straw, and everything will, over a period of like 6 to 9 months, turn into really rich black compost that I can then add to my garden. And we've tried just adding straight, like, aged manure, straw mixed in, like, straight to the garden without piling it up and letting it sit in compost. But what I can tell you is that there's still a lot of weed seed in all of that. And it was basically just like sowing weeds in my garden. Like, I think that was the year that we did that, the weeds were worse than they had ever been. So yes, you could technically just layer manure over your garden, whether it's cow manure or even chicken manure, pig manure, whatever you have, in the fall, and let it sit all winter, and that's great. But in my opinion, going through that extra step to pile it up and actually compost it to kill all of the weed seeds is really worth the extra time. All right, that is it for this week. I will keep you all posted on my seedlings as they germinate and as they grow and as I transplant them outside sometime mid-March. And like I said, I'll put all the resources that I talked about in the description of the video, my seed starting list for my spring garden, and also my potato variety picks, which I'm really excited about. So I'll see you guys next week. Before you go, don't forget to check out the offer that Thrive Market has for Hopewell Heights subscribers in the description of the video.